All right. We are recording. Thanks again for watching, for listening, for absorbing and digesting the information. However you do, this is Jeff Lambert's coming back to you again today. Really, really appreciate your viewership, your listenership, and your continued support of our faith-based, Christian-based podcast. And I want to thanks again for being here. Again, your support. Today we have a very, very special guest, a man that I've known for quite a while through Facebook. We connected through some resources that were both linked up in there and some groups. Got some dots on my face. I keep moving around, but as the sun moves and it comes in the window, I got to revise this and see where I'm standing here so you don't have dots in the middle of my face. His name is Joseph Simiele, and he is a friend of mine down in northwestern Arizona. He's got a story to tell, and he was gracious enough to be on here today. So I want to welcome him directly today. I can always give a glowing, awesome bio as if we've known each other for 20 years, but I always find the source coming directly from the person, and the story coming from the source is always the best way to go about this. So Joseph, thanks for being on here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your story, and then we'll dive in and allow people to get to know you a little bit better.
Hey, thank you so much. Yeah, right now I am strictly stay-at-home dad and full-time in my ministry with kids ministry and youth ministry. Before that, I have owned and operated three different companies. I've owned a furniture store, I've owned a mattress store, and I've owned a landscape business. Um, as far as my history with my walk with faith, I was raised in my childhood. My dad was Catholic, my mom was Mormon, and I was confused. Uh, Religion was just not something really talked about. My dad passed away when I was 13 years old and left me very upset towards God. And I tried to be an atheist for most of my young adult life until about 5 years ago when I found Christ and got reintroduced back into church. Year later, my wife and my current wife now, we began our relationship and we got married. And every decision that I've made since then has really been those leaps of faith. It's really been that prayer-based decision. And if it wasn't for that and that change in lifestyle, I don't think I would have ever experienced the things that I have. I don't think I would have ever owned the businesses that I have, because all of those were, I was that kid who played it safe. My first job, I worked at Wendy's and I was there for 9.5 years
Okay.
because I was too afraid to do anything else. Um, and yeah, when I found God and I found that my that's the right word, the thing that was holding me back the most was me and my fear of trying something new. And once I was able to kind of put my faith in God and realize that things are going to be okay, um, all of a sudden things just started happening, and here we are now.
That's awesome, man. That's a great testament to how a lot of times we can let fear grab us, let the enemy grab us, and kind of take control of our lives when we lose sight of kind of the power that God actually has over everything that's decided. And I struggle with that myself. I know that my son's been struggling with that with some things, like he's had some irrational fears of things that a 14-year-old should never have to worry about. And it's really taken me to another level of like, how strong is my faith and what can I do to instill that into him. So you you've had quite a few things. I mean, it's awesome that you're a stay-at-home dad right now, but you had, when did you start your first business? Which one was first? Was it furniture, mattress, or landscape? And how did those what was the decision making process in those, and how did you say, like, after Wendy's, almost a decade at Wendy's, I just decided to like cut out on my own, or what's the situation?
No, they cut me out. I was with
Okay.
them. I started off as a sandwich maker on the closing crew at the age of 16, and I climbed through the ranks. I was a store manager. I kind of worked as an assistant district manager, and I saw some things I didn't like, and I did not approach them in the most business-like fashion. I brought things up at a regional meeting instead of directly with the person I should have,
Okay.
and it created some turmoil, and we decided to separate employment after, as you said, almost a decade. Um, your other question, which business came first? The furniture business came first. I was working for a rent-to-own business here in Kingman, and
In Kingman, Arizona. It says
Kingman,
Northwest
Arizona, yes.
Arizona. Yep. Yep.
Yep. And my general manager who I was working under, he left, decided to pursue a different career. And about 6 months later, I got a phone call and he says, "Hey, I have an opportunity to take over a furniture store and I want you to be a co-owner with me."
Okay.
Um, and I thought he was absolutely crazy, but I didn't have a really good reason to say no. And I didn't care for our new store manager who replaced him. Um, so yeah, that was my first big leap of faith. It was, um, I didn't like it. I didn't like the idea of it. It was way outside of my comfort zone.
Mhm.
But we just did it, and we jumped in, and we ran that furniture store under the previous owner for about a year and a half. We were introduced to all of the right reps. We were introduced to we went to the furniture market, and there was so much knowledge that I didn't have going into this. But it was, again, I didn't have a good reason to say no, so I just went with it. And one of the best decisions I ever made, just for the life experience, was that furniture store, because I learned so much about the inner workings of a business. I learned the different people I was introduced to, the experience that I got to have. That was my big first leap of faith.
That's awesome. And after working with the other manager that came in, this guy just called you up and said, "Hey, you in or you out?" And you said, "You know what? Taking a leap of faith, I'm in." And that, my guess is that led you, once you built up some confidence, probably had some successes, took you to the next level of the mattress store,
Correct.
the landscaping business. Now, were these in partnership with the same gentleman or partnership with anyone else?
No, the mattress store was all me.
Okay.
Um, so here's the problem with a 50-50 business ownership.
Hmm.
Um, the issue is that when you have 50-50 and you have two different people with two different opinions, there is no one set person who can put their foot down and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And so if I want to go one direction and you want to go another direction, and we can't come to an agreement, we just stay in the middle, and we don't progress, we don't move forward.
Okay.
And over the years, him and I were trying to take the business in different directions. And I truly think that had either one of us had that 51%, had either one of us been able to say, this is what we're doing, I think under either person's leadership, that store could have moved forward. But the problem was is that we just didn't move. We weren't changing with the market. There were other businesses coming to Kingman. We found out that one of our biggest competitors from a different city was coming here. And when that was announced, him and I sat down, had a conversation, and we came to an agreement that this isn't working.
Okay.
It was a very healthy split in the relationship. But he kept the furniture store. I opened the mattress store, which is really where my passion was, anyways. Um, and yeah, then I had the mattress store by myself for about a year, um, and everything was going great. You know, I surpassed all the numbers. I was able to lock in some contracts with some pretty major mattress dealers. I was way ahead of the curve as far as what a new business should be able to do, and everything was going great. And then I was on the main road right through town, and they decided that they were going to replace the water line and shut down the road.
Mm.
Um, they went from 4 lanes of traffic down to 2 lanes of traffic and made me the most difficult mattress store in Kingman to get to. What should have taken 2 months, they did it during the winter, so there was freezing problems. They ended up shutting down the roads for 4 months, opened it back up for a month, and then decided that we did so much damage to the road, we're going to repave the entire thing and shut it back down again.
Oh, wow.
I had lost 90% of my sales
Wow.
during the construction. And when you're closed that long over a 6 month time period, I just couldn't recover from it.
Now, what was the time frame of this? Because it seems like a natural shift would be to kind of go online at that point, but I wonder, when this was and if those resources were available.
Well, I had a website and I had that online presence already,
Mhm.
but mattresses is the one part of the industry. Yeah, you've got those companies out there who strictly sell online, but they have one mattress. They pour all of their marketing dollars into that one mattress, and they try to get people to fall in love with the marketing, which
Okay,
has clearly worked well for a lot of people.
sure.
But when you have a showroom of mattresses trying to figure out for a person based on their bone structure, their weight, how they carry their weight, all those things, what's the right mattress for your body, really you need to come in and lay down.
I get that. I
Um,
get that. You and I have had the conversation outside of this in the past, right? I said, what about this? What
yes.
about this? And you're like, hey, it really is a matter of all these different things. Like, do you have any ailments? Do you have any chronic pain? Do you have anything that is constantly going on? You need to lay down and try out a couple different things. I guess it's something that a lot of people don't really realize in the age of the online mattress sales where you can try it for 90 or 100 days and then send it back. It's an interesting marketing situation like you described, but yeah, I can imagine having a showroom is, it's necessary to come in, sit, lay down, test it out kind of a thing.
Mhm.
So for sure, for sure. So how did so that obviously, so I want to say this. I mean, obviously you had the situation with the guy with the furniture business. There was things that just weren't progressing forward. It's almost like God kind of moved you in the direction of what your passion was anyway.
Right.
But as he oftentimes does, says, you know what, there's going to be a time limit on this. Here's how I'm
Mhm.
going to make this happen and make you decide to do a different thing. What caused you to go into landscaping then? Because if there's any opposite direction, man, it's like you go furniture, which is inside, mattresses, which is about the most intimate inside thing you can get, where you spend, 5 to 8 hours a night or whatever. Then all of a sudden you're doing lawn care and landscaping.
Yes, yes. So funny story. The mattress store was going under, and I kept telling my wife, my faithfulness, look, I'm not going to worry as long as the bills are paid and there's money in the bank. I'm not going to stress. And I really did a good job, in my opinion. She might disagree, of keeping my emotions in check and not allowing it to stress me out. And then all of a sudden, the electric bill hits and the money wasn't there. And it's like, okay, what do I do? I've got a bill to pay and the money's not there. And so I was scrolling through Facebook, and I saw a person who, um, their father had just gotten out of a nursing home and they got him into a home, and the home was going to be inspected by Adult Protective Services come Monday, and they were going to pay someone $250 to get the yard cleaned up. And I'm not too proud to go pull weeds. I've got bills to pay, I've got a family to take care of, and I've got a person who has a need that I can fulfill, and I need the money to pay the bill. So I went over to their house before the mattress store would open, and I would start on their yard, and I had enough time, I can get it done by Monday. And so I'm working on the yard, and um I was about 15 minutes into working on this yard, and my weed eater caught on fire.
Oh,
So now I'm in a position that I can't walk away from them, because this is a huge thing for their lifestyle. If I walk away, then they don't have the ability to get it done in time. Now we've got Adult Protective Services that may come in and disrupt their life, and I made a commitment. So here I am with not enough money to pay my electric bill, and I need to go buy a new weed eater. So I go to the hardware store, and I'm looking at the cheapest weed eater they have just so I can get this job done. And this gentleman walks up to me and says, "Hey, you're buying a weed eater." And I remember I was having a bad morning, and I just kind of glared at this guy, complete stranger, and I said, "You're really observant." And he chuckled. He says, "Do you want to do my yard?"
huh.
And I just take this deep breath, and I remember looking up, and it's like, is this you opening a door? You know what? Sure, why not? Let's do your yard too. And he says, "Well, I'm a landlord and I have 4 houses that need to be done."
Okay.
So I put back the really cheap weed eater, and I buy the most expensive weed eater that I could afford at the time. And I go finish that one house. I do his homes, and then the neighbor liked it, and I did the neighbor's home, and then their sister liked it, and I did their home. And the next thing you know, I accidentally started a landscape business. It was not intentional. Um, it was something that the door just kind of opened to me, and
Huh.
then I ended up closing the mattress store because I didn't have enough time to
Huh.
do all the yards. Um, I uh, I went and got licensed, bonded, and insured. I
Wow.
started managing a couple apartment complexes, but it was completely by accident. I had no idea what I was doing. Everything people started getting me to do bigger, more complex jobs. It
Wow.
started out just yard care, and then it went to full on landscaping. And I'm googling my way through. I'm YouTubing my way through. Did a few turf jobs, and yeah, it was a really interesting turning point in my life. And again, when it comes to that leap of faith, uh, yes, God was closing a door, but had I not been willing to go with the flow, that next door wouldn't have opened.
I find that incredibly powerful and humbling in a situation where you could have easily said to this gentleman, "Nope, I'm just doing one job."
Mhm.
And a lot of times, especially men in our pride, like you said, I'm not too proud to pull weeds. I've literally been in that when I got custody of my son and I had to move back to where I live now. I worked for a company and I wasn't making very much money. I didn't have any savings. I don't even think I had a checking account at that point. I had to open a checking account in order to have direct deposit. And I couldn't open a checking account because I had so overdrawn my other one as I was going through the divorce, where some of the managers, there were like 8 managers, two or three of them shared a house over in Grand Rapids. And I remember they were talking about, pulling weeds, cleaning up their yard. And I said, "Hey, I've got a son, I got a 10-year-old. He's probably not going to be thrilled about it, but I could use the extra money." I just remember I felt like I had to swallow my pride to go over there. And these people that were my supervisors at the company, and not only was I working for them, taking direction all day, but I spent like 6 hours on a Saturday cleaning up their yard and just kind of thinking like, how are they gonna, what is there any respect there? And I kind of went, you know what, it doesn't really matter. I gotta pay. I gotta keep food on the table. So I understand what you mean, but that's, as a proud man, sometimes it's hard to swallow that pride and say, I got bills to pay. I got food
Mhm.
that needs to go on the table, and I got kids expecting me to do these things. So that's it's and those doors open. It's amazing, absolutely amazing, man. That's so. How long do you have the landscape company then? Because that sounds like it went from you're helping somebody, you meet a landlord, and that just kind of like took off from there.
It did. It really did. And I had that going pretty consistently for about 10 months. And I wasn't in it long enough to get a really strong contract base as far as the maintenance coming back every week. And it was going until this time last year. And when temperatures dropped, because really, we're high desert, it gets pretty warm here. So when temperatures dropped, all of a sudden the calls quit coming in because people were willing to do their own yard.
Hmm.
Physically, that was not the career choice I was going after. It was very hard on me. I was in constant pain, burnt up by the sun. I was about 5 shades darker than I am now.
Hmm.
And physically it was really hard on my body. And the day it all changed, I was I had picked my daughter up from school, and when you leave her school and I'm heading home, I always make a left turn, and there was so much traffic coming that I couldn't make my left, and cars were building up behind me, and so I had to make a right-hand turn, kind of pull off on a side street, and kind of make a U-turn. And when I did that, I got stuck behind a bus with the bus number was 143,
Hmm.
and I kind of stared at it for a minute, and for whatever reason, that number really called out to me. And to the point, I actually took a picture of it. I'll send that to you when we're done. I took a
Yeah,
picture
please.
of it, and I felt the name Isaiah. And so I went to my wife's office, and I just dropped off my daughter, and I go over there and I decide to pull up Isaiah 14:3, And it says in there, on this day, the Lord gives you relief from your suffering and turmoil and from the harsh labor forced upon you.
Wow. Are you serious?
Yes, yeah, dead serious. I get goosebumps even talking about it. And so I'm staring at this, and I looked at my wife and I said, I'm getting a job offer tomorrow. And she looks at me and she says, okay, have you put in any applications? And I said, no, but I'm getting a job offer tomorrow. This is done. This is I served my time. We've got ahead on the bills. Um, Physically, it was so much hard labor on me, and I said it's changing tomorrow. And so I did what we all do. We get this message, we get this calling, and then we try and take control. So I went out the rest of the day and I filled out a bunch of applications. That day I was able to land 2 interviews and didn't get either one of the jobs. I was too qualified. And so I went home and I remember thinking to myself, I said, well, maybe it wasn't a message from God. Maybe this was just a thought put in my head. Maybe it wasn't anything. And I wake up the next day and I'm looking at my calendar and I've got a bunch of blank spots on my calendar. And one of my clients sends me a text message while I'm already looking at my phone that says, "Hey, how's the landscape business going for you?" Perfect timing, buddy. I said, "Well, it's slowed down a little bit, but things are all right." And he says, "Oh, would you be interested in selling cars? One of our guys just quit."
Okay.
Now, if you would have ever asked me in my entire life, would I ever have interest in being a car salesman? No. Had I not seen the bus the day prior, would I have said yes to his job offer? Probably not. Um, I had a really bad car buying experience. I had no intention of ever going down that path. But here I am. I get this message the day before. I tell my wife I'm going to get a job offer the next day. And lo and behold, I get a text message with a job offer the next day. And I say, okay, all right, I'm going to start selling cars. And they were very, really respectful of me in my time. They understood that I still had some customers that I was maintaining. So I kind of hired in as part time, found other people to take over my contracts I had in landscaping. And then I went into car sales full time. And that was an amazing experience. I learned so much. And again, connected with more people, um, made new friends, learned so much in that industry, and was able to put myself in the position that I'm in now, where I'm actually able to stay home with the kids and go full time into the ministry.
That's absolutely incredible. What a kind of a roundabout way into getting to where you are right now. So absolutely. You've got some cool effect going on with your phone. I want to point out too that you're in Arizona, and most people, myself included, for the most part, say Arizona in November has got to be blisteringly hot. And as we talked about ahead of time, you're in your car with what looks like a flannel, a jacket, and a hat, considering that it's 31 degrees Fahrenheit when we started this 30 minutes ago before we got
Yep.
on. And I went, man, it's t-shirts and shorts in the house, and I'm getting warm as the sun comes through the window. It's supposed to be 73 here in Michigan. So it's like, who knows? Tomorrow in Michigan it's supposed to be 76. It might be 40. We'll see what happens. So
Yeah, yeah. Well,
with
we've climbed up to 38 now.
all right,
Yeah,
7 degrees in just a handful of minutes. So it might end up getting to 60 or 70 for you today. Who knows?
we'll
It
see
might be
what happens.
120.
Yeah.
So there's a couple things I want to kind of jump back into. Your father was Catholic, mother was a Mormon. Father passed away when you were 13. I think you said 13 or 14, right?
Yep.
So did that guide you more towards, like, did mom convert to Catholicism? Did dad convert to Mormon? Did they both kind of keep their separates, as you said, confused? Maybe it was because they were both like, hey, we love each other, we're gonna have a family, God brought us together, but here's my beliefs, and you and siblings are kind of in the middle going, what do we do? Like, did that, when father passed away, I'm really sorry to hear about that. That's absolute tragedy as a teenager, as a child, anyway, anytime. But did that guide you more towards Mormon beliefs then?
So we had a missionary come to the house
Okay.
from the Mormon church, and he had all great intent, but not a good delivery of the message. He came to me with the Bible and handed it to me, my 13-year-old self who just lost my dad, and tells me in whatever words that here's the book of rules that you will follow if you ever want to see your dad again.
Oh,
Um,
that's an approach that wouldn't resonate with most people.
correct,
Gee,
correct. And it
okay.
was, I had a lot of anger. And the one thing that people kept telling me that made me more angry every time I heard it was people would tell me that just remember, God will never give you more than you can handle.
I've heard that many times.
Well, the Bible doesn't say that.
Mhm.
There's nowhere in the Bible that it tells you that. So, my 13-year-old self, someone telling me that God will never give me more than I can handle told me two things. One, God will never give you, which means that every trial and problem in my life was given to me and created by God. That's the message I received. And the more than you can handle told me that I already have the strength to deal with it on my own, which is the complete opposite of what the Bible actually tells us. The Bible
Mm,
tells us that um, uh, through Christ we can do all things. And so what really is it is that when you go through Christ, there's nothing that this world can give you that you can't handle.
okay.
Um, but you have to go through him. And that's the part that I was angry, I was mad. Um, I really started studying science because I wanted to disprove the Bible because I was so angry. And I spent years trying to do that. And then I accepted the fact that through all my studying, I really couldn't find any rock solid evidence to disprove the Bible. So God does exist, and He took my dad from me, and I'm mad at him.
Okay.
And um, it was years, about 15 years of that kind of attitude before I finally realized that most trials that you will have in your life are created by you or the people you hold closest to you.
Okay.
My father passed away because he didn't take care of himself. My dad passed away at almost 600 pounds.
Okay.
My prayer at that time was allow my dad to continue his poor lifestyle and not suffer the consequences of it. My God did not take my father away from me.
Mhm.
My father made life choices that led him to where he was at, and our family's the one who paid the price.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when that person came to me with that approach, and I didn't mean to digress from your question of
No, no.
um, while my dad was alive, religion wasn't talked about.
Mhm.
Um, we were told if we had a problem and we would ask for, hey, what do we do? I remember my mom's very common answer was go pray on it.
Okay.
Um, I didn't really know how to do that. I didn't know how to ask for that guidance. I didn't know how to receive that answer.
So
And
she
so
didn't give
that's
you any
what
guidance on that. Sorry, she just said go pray. She didn't say, here's a way that you should pray.
right.
Just go
Nope.
pray. Okay.
Um, we went to church a handful of times in my childhood. We would go to the Mormon church, and like I said, it was just a handful of times, and otherwise, it was just religion just wasn't talked about in our home. Both my parents believed in God, but neither were practicing by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's man, even more to the story than what I expected on that. I appreciate you answering that. As far as the last year goes, it sounds like you've had some interesting things that have happened over the last handful of years with your businesses. As I'm going to use the word transition, been almost, the what do they say? The hand is guided. My hand was forced, almost like
Yeah,
going from this to this to this to the landscaping to now into your ministry. Like, what's been the largest challenge, specifically in kind of navigating through these roles, and how are you managing that?
I it's hard for me to answer that question. I As far as the biggest difficulty is trying to I'll say practice what I preach and not allow myself to become stressed, to have my full faith in God, to know that things are going to be okay. Um when those bills are rolling in and the checks aren't, it's real easy to forget that you're taken care of.
Okay.
So as far as my biggest challenge, I would have to say it's the controlling my emotion and not allowing stress and anxiety to kind of take a foothold in my life.
Okay. So what do you do when is there something that you do every day before you start your day every morning, or is there something you do in the evening before you close your eyes outside of what I assume you have prayer time? Is there anything that you do to help say, I need to, Joseph, I need to not try to control every situation? Like, are there steps that you take? Is there something that you do, something that you read, meditation, anything like that?
I am constantly going onto YouTube, onto different streaming sites, and listening to those motivational speeches, listening to sermons, um, pretty much any source that I can from successful people to kind of tune me back in and bring me back to reality. Um, a lot of it is going to be the faith based, but the other part of it is being business management related, and it's just kind of keeping me tuned in to the reality of there are a lot of things in my life that I have control of. There's a lot of things in my life that I do not have control of,
Hmm.
and to gear my focus towards where I have influence.
Okay.
Um, if I've got 10 things on my plate and 9 things that I have no control of, I'm gonna focus on that last one.
Okay. All right. So with that being said, then, as far as your primary influences, then who are your top three influences, or your top, maybe you've got some channels on YouTube that or somebody that you specifically seek out. Do you YouTube Tony Robbins or something like that? Do you have influences on that level, or are they more personal influences, and what are they? And with that, second part, how do you continue to learn beyond that level to continue to get better, help in your ministry, that kind of thing?
Um, so I've got a list of those influences in my life, both on personal and on the more professional level. On my personal level, I would have to say the number one biggest influence on my life with where I am now would absolutely be my wife.
Okay.
Um, we've only been married for 4 years. However, we've known each other since we were 13. We were childhood friends.
Wow.
Um, been with each other through thick and thin. Give me I apologize. I have a bird in my car.
Okay, I'm gonna pause real quick. All right, everyone. If you're watching, if you're listening, find us on YouTube. The link is in here. Go and watch this. I don't know what our timing is on this one here. Probably 30 or so minutes in. Joseph had a bird, possibly a cactus wren, enter the window that he says was open about what, 4 inches maybe?
About that, yeah, yeah.
A cactus wren, which is not a little tiny bird, but it's not a hawk. But
Right,
I saw it in the back window, like to what is your right. I'm looking at you, my left. And I
right.
thought, that's interesting. Maybe he's on the tire on the outside. And you're like, no, he's inside the car. So
Yep.
we're back from a break. How crazy is that? So um, I lost my pace here. Influences. Your
Influences,
wife,
yes.
4 years. You've known each other since you were kids.
Yes.
Um, let's
Um,
try to get back on track. That's
yeah, let's do this. All right.
that's
So,
something.
yeah, my wife has been one of my biggest influences throughout my entire life because she's always been my rock. She's always been that very strong Christian.
Okay.
And I've seen what God has done for her in her life. And I remember even back when we were in high school, as we discussed, I was very angry towards God,
Yeah.
and she was always trying to kind of gear me back towards church and kind of guide me back in. And I would complain about something, and she'd tell me the same thing my mom did, just pray on it, and I would just get mad at her. And it took me a long time before finally I was talking to her one day. I said, this whole God kick that you're on, um, maybe you're not wrong. And she just started laughing at me, and we started talking a little more about faith and talking about God and talking about the Bible. And that was her biggest recommendation was, yeah, get plugged into a church, yeah, do these things, but go to the source, go to the Bible, read the Bible. And she actually bought me my first Bible as an adult. I still have it in a leatherback case. And um, I wouldn't be where I was at today if it wasn't for her and the impact that she's had on my life. um,
Wow.
the second personal reference that really comes to mind who's had the biggest influence on my life was my childhood's best friend's dad. As discussed, my dad had passed away when I was 13. I was raised around all women. My brother had moved out, And I could use a sewing machine, I could crochet, and I had no idea how to cut wood. And one day I was at his house, at my friend's house, and his dad asked me for help with a project. He was recovering from an injury that he had and couldn't go up the ladder. And I'll never forget it. This man, give you a little bit of background on him. He stood 6 foot 11 and a half inches. He
What?
was upset he never got to 7 foot.
How did you
Um,
fit in this room?
he was a big guy. It was easy to look up to him, if you know what I mean.
That's a
And
bad dad joke, but I'll take it.
yeah, no, it's the truth. And I remember one day I was up on the roof trying to help him with something, and he takes his table saw and puts it up on the roof, or not a table saw, but a skill saw, and he sets it up there and he looks and he says, "Can you cut a straight line?" It's, Ron, I don't even know how to start that.
Wow. Okay.
And he gives me this look of pure disappointment.
Oh,
And I was so embarrassed that I had made the decision I was never going back over to that house. And clearly I was wrong. That weekend, I get a phone call. It was my friend's dad. And he says, "Hey, what are you doing right now?" I said, "Well, nothing right now. It's you early in the Saturday morning." He says, "Okay, well, I'm out front. Come out." So, okay, what are we doing? This doesn't matter. Well, I guess not. Okay. So I go outside and he takes me over to his shop and he says, "There are clearly a lot of things that you don't know that you need to learn. So we're going to start today." And he taught me how to use a saw. He taught me how to build. He taught me how to woodwork. He started showing me how to work on engines. He had a boat. He took me out on the boat. I learned how to drive a boat. I learned how to work on that engine. Um, and I would say that one of the biggest influences that I had from him is one thing that he told me was that, "Joe, in today's world, with the internet at your fingertips, there is no excuse for ignorance."
I'll get behind that.
Um, and for him to, he owed me nothing. He had no reason to do what he did except for the goodness of his heart, to go out there and just say, "There's this kid who has a need that I can fulfill. I'm bringing him under my wing, and I'm going to teach him everything I have." And that's exactly what he did. And I would say that he's one of the biggest influences that I've had that got me into kids and youth ministry that I do now, was that experience with him.
So that him not even necessarily looking at you and saying you need to learn things about God, about faith. It's like you need to learn things that, granted, some might disagree with this, but essentially kind of man's roles, almost type of things like how to cut wood, these kind of things, like traditional things, right? More or less.
Right. Most definitely.
Tune an engine, change a tire, drive a boat, these kind of things. And I'll say that it's not necessarily you need to know these things in order to be or prove yourself as a man, but these are important things to know, just life skills, when you're
Right.
experiencing life, depending on where you grow up. If you don't grow up around water and you hate water, there's no reason to learn how to drive a boat. But obviously, these things are necessary. Um, that's important. That's very important. And that, not even him kind of taking you under his wing and doing kind of a Bible study and mentorship, discipleship, but more of like, these are things that are important. You grew up with all women. I want to be, a father figure to you. And that led you
Right.
to there is exactly what you said, be a father figure to these young men in your ministry.
Right.
So
Correct.
you got a third one?
Um, outside of the stereotypical answer, I would say God, but I think that's too easy of an answer, so I'm not going to go with that one.
Okay. Okay.
Um, outside of my personal influences, going on to more of the YouTube that we discussed,
Sure.
I would say one of my number one influences that I've gone to was a gentleman by the name of Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yep.
Gary V.
Second time he's come up in this show in the last couple of days.
Yep.
Yep.
Um, I think that his approach to a lot of the questions is not just the knowledge that he has, but his approach to different people, and how he's very unapologetic. He doesn't get offended. I've seen a lot of his interviews where a person asks a question that he could have chosen to take offensively, and he doesn't.
Mhm.
He's very straightforward. He's very direct. Here's your question. Here's your answer. Let's move on. And I've learned a lot as far as being in my business career, working major contracts, deal multi-million dollar contracts, buying the furniture store and so forth, is learning that approach of professionalism that he has. And I would say that definitely one of my go-to sources, not only for myself, but even when I'm advising other people, and sources I tell other people to plug into, he's been one that's been brought up for me quite often.
That's awesome. And whether you love him or hate him, I know some people are going to watch this are kind of like, oh man, he's too profane for me. Well, maybe, there's a lot
Right.
of people out there that are, and you don't have to watch his videos. You don't have to listen to his podcast, but you're absolutely right, Joseph. I've listened to a handful of them, whether he was the host, whether he was the guest, or whether somebody just caught him, on TikTok or whatever, because I know he's a
Right.
huge, huge proponent of that. And we had a gentleman on here recently too. He says the reason I started my TikTok channel, he said something in like 3 months, he's got 12,000 subscribers, was because he's a big fan of Gary Vee. So definitely, definitely important on that. I got a bajillion and a half other things that we can talk about on here, but I want to kind of bring it back to what you had said earlier. You referenced Isaiah 14:3 as it was the number of the school bus, the whatever bus number
Yes.
143, correct?
Correct.
Dare I assume, and I hate to do it, but obviously it was important to you because it kind of guided you in a certain way in your life. Is that one of your favorite verses or your favorite verse?
It is not.
Okay.
It is
Okay.
not.
Do you have one?
Yes, I do have one, and this is where I said the irony of what happened earlier was going to be plugged
Yeah.
back in
Yep.
now.
We'll come
Okay.
back to it in a second.
Yes. Matthew 6:26.
Okay.
As we've discussed, I've really struggled with stress, anxiety, depression through my childhood, and Matthew 6:26. Look at the birds of the air. They neither reap nor sow nor gather in barns, yet your good Lord feeds them. Are you not more important than they? And that has always been a very, very huge verse to me. That reminder that I'm taken care of. That reminder that I'm going to be all right. And that's kind of always my anchor that pulls me back in. There are always birds around somewhere. In my case, the back of my van. Um, and it's I remember one day I was super stressed, and there was something happening at work, and it was that breaking point for me. Didn't know what to do, and I step out of my office ready to have a complete mental breakdown, and it was a crow comes hopping out from behind a car. It's at the car dealership
Hmm.
with a Cheeto in his mouth.
A Cheeto, the little orange.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And I make eye contact with this bird, and he just stares at me with this Cheeto in his mouth. And it brought me right back to Matthew 6:26.
Wow. No doubt.
You're good, are you your good Lord feeds them, are you not more important than they? And I kind of stared at this bird for a minute. We sat there staring at each other. And it was that reminder, almost humorous in the moment of I'm ready to have a mental breakdown and I'm laughing at a crow with a Cheeto.
Wow.
But that's always been my go-to verse in all of my stresses. It ties right back to that. It's I know I'm taken care of.
Right. I love that Matthew 6:26. That's come up recently in my own morning devotions. I'm doing the Bible in a year, going through the whole
Okay.
Bible in a year, and that's come up not even that long ago. But I want to build on that real quick. So if you go through from 25 through even 34, the whole section is about. It's literally called what I have in my NIV. Do not worry, and it not
Mhm.
only talks about what you referenced with the birds. Do I not feed them? But do not worry about your life when you eat or drink. It's about your body, what you wear. Is not life more important than food? The body more important than clothes? Talks about the trees and the air, all these different things. That's going through what you've experienced, going through in 2020 with a global pandemic, which, as far as I know, very few people who are alive at this time have experienced something like this before. I don't think anybody, in fact, maybe one or two, centenarians, whatever they call them. But what was the Spanish flu of 1912? Maybe I'm
Mhm.
not that good at with history, but nothing that the majority of us have ever experienced before. And these are important things, which I guess ironically has going back into is like led me to do this podcast, is to say,
Right.
what ultimately does God mean in your life, and how has he guided you in your decisions, and to say, no matter what's happening on a personal level or a global level, he's got you.
Yep.
And that's man with the crow. That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. I absolutely love that. So going into what we talked about ahead of time, I give you the questions, kind of give you some reference, and you're like, that's the question I would have asked myself. And I said, hey, I've been putting it into my questions interviews lately. So if you could step into my shoes, taking that question, which you obviously asked, off the table, what would you ask yourself that I did not?
And
Start
I've
back.
thought about that since we started talking, and since you already asked that, I don't really have one that immediately comes to mind. I'm gonna be honest
Okay.
with you.
Well, not a worry. I can teach you how to keep birds out of your car, is to just roll the window up a little bit further, or to
He's
put them
actually
in the
back on
car.
my mirror right now looking inside. That's great.
That's so awesome, man. That bird is he's. I wonder if you're close to his nest. I don't know what the nesting season is in Arizona, but that's something very
I have
cool.
no idea.
So, Joseph, how can we get a hold of you? If somebody listens to this, somebody watches this, they're intrigued, they want to reach out to you, they're curious, they're in your area, and they want to know about your youth ministry discipleship. They want to reach out to you, and maybe they're in Pennsylvania, maybe they're in Oregon, maybe they're in Texas. Who knows? How do they get a hold of you? How can people find you online?
The best way is through Facebook. I
Okay.
don't have any online presence for the ministry that I have with recently. It was just a month ago that I made my transition into full-time ministry.
Okay.
It is something I'm going to build up to. But right now, just looking me up on Facebook, Joseph Simiele. That is the best way to connect with me. Messenger through Facebook. I'm pretty responsive on there.
Yes, you
Um,
are.
but as of right now, that's my key source of online presence.
So why don't you give us the spelling of your last name, because it could be confused as it was for me. So,
Gotcha. Yes, my last name, Simiele.
all right, awesome, awesome. So Facebook, are you on anywhere else? Are you kind of navigating into a Twitter, an Instagram, a LinkedIn, your own web page kind of a thing, or right now it's just Facebook?
It's just Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I have a TikTok. I don't. I use it to like watch videos. I'm not
Sure.
really participating on it right now.
Okay.
I'm going to gear more toward Instagram because I'm finding that the younger generation is gearing towards that.
Cool.
Um, I think Twitter is very much a demographic area. Here where I live, I don't know many people who use Twitter.
Okay.
A neighboring city, it's really popular. So
Sure.
I think it's based on demographic. But right now, Facebook is the main source, and then I'm slowly getting into more of Instagram.
Okay. Are you affiliated with a local church that you can talk about and say, or is it something that we can maybe just put in the notes later, or is that more of a let's not go there right now?
So I am plugged in through kids ministry through Hope City Church here,
All right, and that's in
and
Kingman.
that's here in Kingman.
Okay.
That's an Assemblies of God.
Okay.
Um, and so that's when I'm doing the kids camp, kids con, things like that. I'm always plugged in through there. And then the youth ministry reach out thing. I take the kids to the church to participate in our youth group, but outside of that, between my godsons and other boys who've kind of
Mhm.
come into our lives, a lot of that is right now just being done out of our home, bonfires and Bible studies and
Okay.
such. But that part of it's not directly affiliated with the church.
Okay.
It's just something I'm doing on my own.
Awesome. Awesome. And it is your 3-year-old's birthday today,
Yes, it
correct?
is.
Yeah. So happy
Yes, it is.
birthday to the wonderful young lady, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, what do you feel, final question here, Joseph, before we depart, what do you feel your purpose on this planet is?
I have one goal in life, and it comes down to I want to save one soul that would have otherwise not been saved. And the tricky part about that being a lifetime goal is I'll never actually know if I achieve it while still on this planet.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I can guide people to church. I can read to them from the Bible. But of course, one, whether or not they're saved is entirely based on their personal relationship with our Lord. But also, I don't know who would have been guided through another avenue had I not been there.
Hmm.
And so all I can do is be the best influence that I can be to as many people as I can reach, um, with that end goal in mind of saving that soul.
Wow, that's incredible. Absolutely incredible. And that is a tough one because you'll never know as you're still alive and here.
Right.
So we'll find out someday.
Exactly.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Joseph. Thank you so much for your time, your dedication, your commitment. You're dealing with the things that life and God brought to you, including a bird in the back of your vehicle today. So we'll
Yes.
figure out what that, where he or she is gone at some point, if she's still in your mirror or not. But I wish you an absolute wonderful, wonderful day. What are you at? 9 o'clock right now? 9 a.m.
10:10.
10:10. So yeah, you're a couple hours back from us. So again, thank you so very much for being on here. And I love that you're so active on Facebook and that you're doing the things that you're doing with your ministry. I wish you nothing but success. So I will look forward to talking with you again. Maybe we'll do a follow up on this one and we can kind of see where you're at in another year or so. And we'll definitely have to do a second on this one. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, man. God
All right.
bless.
God bless.